If you have ADHD, you always want to know the why. I hate inefficiencies. Absolutely hate inefficiency. I like to think that if I optimize a website, you can almost see how many trees you've saved the climate. I'll get you into the room with the best SEOs in the Netherlands. Who do you think loads the dishwasher at my house? Who do you think loads the dishwasher? And he basically said, I think this is bullshit. The main common misconception about SEO is that
dress for the podcast you want, not the podcast you have. Welcome to a new episode of No Hacks Podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of optimization, whether it's for your online presence or personal habits, because around here we know that mastering the process is the first step to success. It's season 2, and we have a new logo, new website, and a new easy way to follow the podcast wherever you want. So if you go to nohackspod.com/follow, you will never miss another episode. Isn't that incredible? And another thing that is incredible is my next guest. Arnout Hellemans is a digital strategist who specializes in SEO, SEM, PPC, web performance, analytics, and CRO to drive business growth. So how do you specialize in so many things? That's just one of the things we'll cover today. Arnout, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Was really looking forward.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. And I must say, what led to you being on the podcast? I was at Experimentation Elite in June, and our mutual friend, Abby Huff, also a guest on the podcast in the past, grabbed my arm and said, there's a person you need to talk to. Okay, let me see who that person is. And my guest today is here thanks to Abby Huff. So thank you, Abby Huff. Let's talk about your background. It's a lot of different things to specialize in. What are the most uncommon or not thought about benefits of having such a diverse skill set?
It starts with, in the end, if you want to help a business grow, you need to understand their business model. If you understand their business model, there's loads of ways to improve. You can get more traffic to the site, you can improve their whatever, or it's just removing friction on the site, right? So from the beginning, my starting point is always, how do you make money? And once you figure out how you make money, you can work backwards on what's needed. And I think from a very early moment, that's just the way I started consulting. I didn't start out just, I want to get more traffic to my website. I was like, how can I improve this business?
So what do you consider yourself then? You're like a growth consultant?
Yeah, but the problem with that is it's been taken by all these growth hackers that do tactical things, right? They don't look at it holistically. I don't want to say I'm a growth hacker. I don't know. I'm just an optimizer, right?
This is the perfect podcast to say you don't want to be a hacker. There's no better place to say hacks are bad than this. I guarantee you that. When we were preparing for the interview, I sent you the intake form because this podcast is fancy. We have intake forms. We have everything now, basically, in season 2. And
very well prepared. Well done.
I appreciate hearing that. And what I tell people and who want to have a podcast, dress for the podcast you want, not the podcast you have currently. And that's how you will reach that next step in your growth. One thing you mentioned is having neurodiverse background and how that and ADHD help pattern recognition, finding optimization opportunities. So tell me about that first. Like, how does that actually help you?
First of all, when I started consulting, which is in, I think, 2010, I just thought my brain worked in exactly the same way as everybody else. But I think just before COVID, I read an article and I basically self-diagnosed with ADHD. And my wife basically said, I don't want you to talk about ADHD if you didn't do a proper test. And I was like, okay. So I got proper diagnosed. And when they then explain to you how everything works, you kind of go, I get it. And suddenly it also makes sense because ADHD, basically, my brain, I pick up everything. I can't sit in a conversation. If there's other people having a conversation, I listen in on everything. So I multitask all the time. And I store this useless information at that moment. But apparently it's not useless, right? And when you start learning about this, in my brain, I connect dots very easily. But I can also morph into other people. So I can look at a website and think, this is what I'm missing. right? Pretty much immediately. It just suddenly, because everything comes in. When I look at a SERP, I always ask the question, why is it there? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And I think loads of SEOs have the same thing, right? Because the good ones, because they want to know the why. And that's the
Right.
whole thing. If you have ADHD, you always want to know the why. And as a parent of two ADHD kids, it's terrible because they always want to know the why. Sometimes there is no why. Yet I would do exactly the same.
I was always looking at things pretty much the same way. I never got why someone wouldn't want to know the why. Like, and it's normal sometimes to just not want to know. I get that. But when I started, I was first a developer for quite a long time. But I was always looking at websites in a way, this is broken. Like, this can be better. And once you start thinking that way and accept that mindset, there's no turning back. Especially with websites, the first thing, and we both did a lot of performance, like speed optimization. Yeah. The first thing I do with a website is open the console and see how it loads. Even when I don't work with the website, I need to know if they're preloading some stupid things, if they have some script. I don't know why. I just need to do that. Anyway,
the first thing I do is I test it because it also benchmarks. If they're really optimized, I know I have to bring my A game, right? But if it's really shitty, I know I can already add a lot of value.
Exactly. And to go back to that article you mentioned, there's one thing that was really eye-opening for me and a few other people I shared it with, the interest-based ADHD nervous system.
Yeah, the interest-based nervous system.
So what's that exactly? I want you to explain it to the audience in your own words.
An interest-based nervous system is basically that if something interests you, you go full on in. But you lose interest very easily and get distracted by something else. This is multiple tabs, these kind of things. My brain is constantly functioning. And what happens in interest-based nervous system is just, if I'm really interested into something, I really want to know everything on it. I want to improve it, make it better. But once I've already done that, it's not very interesting anymore. And I think you can see that in my career as well, right? At some point, I was fed up with links, changing a page title and changing a bit of content, right? And then I started doing more technical stuff or analytics. And this is why I like CRO so much, is because it works in a completely different way. You're basically manipulating a human brain on the other end, which is so much fun, right?
100%. I could not agree more. I've seen myself do that. The journey and the trying to learn something is the fun part. Once you're good enough, it's not as appealing, right? I mean, that's my personal perspective.
It's also a mindset. I hate inefficiencies. Absolutely hate inefficiencies anywhere. Right. Whether it's the dishwasher, whether it's the laundry, whether it's anything, whether it's the way bikes are parked, it can always be done better. Right. If I drive a car, not in Germany, because in Germany I like to drive fast, but otherwise I'm always gaming. How much kilometer to the liter can I get? Yeah. Can I get down? Can I do better than last month? Right? I'm always gaming. I hate it when my wife has driven the car because she screwed my stats. Right?
I get that.
It's like that.
I know what you mean. That's great. One thing I learned about your country, and you're from the Netherlands, I was always wondering, and I've had so many people from your country, optimizers, and if there's an optimizers per capita country, that number one, it has to be so obvious. I never understood why until I visited last September. I went to a WordPress conference to WordCamp Netherlands there, and it was in Arnhem, I think, was the city.
Yeah.
And when you walk the streets in the Netherlands, you see that everything is optimized here. Like it's like no other country in the world. Everything is in order, maybe not according to you who live there, but just live somewhere else and come to the Netherlands and you'll see what I mean.
I think there's another reason, because with Lucas, you also discussed this, right?
Yeah.
Why is it?
Yeah.
And my theory on why is very simple. Because we're middlemen.
Explain that.
We don't have any national resource. We just don't, right? Okay. We have a few cows, but we're so small. But if you think about it, we've got one of the largest, I think the largest harbor in Europe, Rotterdam. Mm-hmm. What do we do there? We get stuff from abroad, we repackage it, and we make money on doing that, right? So if you have that, every little thing counts.
Right.
If you can buy it cheaper, if you can ship it more efficiently,
You have to,
gives
you have to
wealth.
optimize the entire process and squeeze every drop everywhere you can, right?
Exactly. At least this is my theory, right?
Right. It's a good theory.
And this is also why we have Conversion Hotel and why we've got all of these conversion conferences and why there's so many speakers. We need to squeeze every little thing out of it.
That's really interesting. So the main topic today, and we'll have a side topic in the main topic. The main topic is SEO and why the fundamentals will always matter. So we'll jump into that. But before we do that, I want to ask you, in your many years of doing optimization, what is the one advice from a mentor, formal or non-formal, that you got that was the most beneficial to you?
Ooh, I think one of the best ones was Joost de Valk.
WordPress legend, let's just say that.
Before I started freelancing, I worked at a company, and the guy, Robin Ellenson, said, "Do you want to learn SEO? I'll get you into the room with the best SEOs in the Netherlands, just one-on-one mentorship." So I was there in a room with Joost, and he didn't start Joost then. He just had Joost.com as a blog. And he asked me, "What kind of clients do you have?" And I said, "I do cargo bikes." And he said, "Can I have a cargo bike? I'll get you a link." So we got a cargo bike versus a link. And then afterwards, I looked at a full frame site, like with frames, right? And it needed a new one. And I went to him and I made a plan. And so I said, "Can I pay for your advice for 2 hours?" And I sat there, I gave him my whole plan. And the only thing he said, I would change that into an H1. And that was it. That gave me so much confidence. That was such a confidence booster. If somebody is so well known in the industry and gives you this kind of feedback, you're basically saying, "I can't see any flaws in your plan." And that was boom.
That's a great story. That's a really good, because I mean, I was also in Leiden at WordCamp Europe 2013, the first WordCamp Europe ever. And Joost was one of the speakers there, and talking about making the pie bigger versus fighting for pieces of the pie. The open source pie was a story. But such a respected figure, such an incredible SEO and WordPress figure that I'm really glad you mentioned him, and it was him. Now, the basics of SEO, that's the most basic question, quote unquote, that I can ask. But why do fundamentals still and always seem to matter in SEO? And let's just list what the fundamentals are.
Yeah, well, the fundamental is think about the user, but also think about search engines so they can index everything, so they can understand what is on a page, like the simple fundamentals. A lot of people go after the shiny objects, and but the basics have become more and more important over the years, especially with new technologies like React. People seem to just forget about the basics, right? I get really annoyed that they don't get this, but I think it's getting even more important because the web is growing at such a scale. You need to make it easy for search engines to grab your information and do something with it. Because if you make it difficult, then why would they care? And if you look at the simple cost of crawling at the moment, it's ridiculous. There's a very nice piece about the real cost of JavaScript by Eddie Osmani. I like to think that if I optimize a website, you could almost see how many trees you've saved the climate, right? It's ridiculous. So it really matters.
This is sort of half conspiracy theory, but I was always thinking that Google introduced Core Web Vitals to cut their costs on crawling the web. Like
I've been saying this for ages. They frame it towards users, but actually you're saving them so much money. If you think about AMP, if you think about like all of these kind of things, it's just about cost saving, because how much more ads can they sell?
You're saying I'm not
crazy. I don't think you're
basically.
crazy. No, definitely.
Thank you very
not.
much for saying that.
Definitely
but that's
not.
the thing. I mean, what they did with the Core Web Vitals initiative, I was riding that wave and working as a performance optimization specialist for the first few years of Core Web Vitals. And what they did to put that performance mindset in the heads of people who maybe didn't even need to be so scared of it, but it was good that they put the conversation on the table. And now everybody was talking about web performance. And I think that's great.
They framed it correctly because in the beginning, they used WPOstats.com,
Right.
which give you all case studies on because they tried to do this through CRO people. And then what they said, I saw the official statement about Core Web Vitals. They said it can impact rankings.
And they
Yet
still
all the
do.
publications went, it impacts rankings. And suddenly everybody was like, let's go. And the other thing is, it's something tangible for an SEO, right? You see a number change. So you can show the client, hey, I've done my work, right?
And not just the number, it goes from red to green. Like
Exactly.
that signal,
It's-
that tiny little thing. Is brilliant.
There's so many dark patterns in there. Like it's very shady, right? And it's not even true, right? You can score 100 yet have an enormous page which doesn't load.
I had a similar problem with the previous website for the podcast. I was hosting it with one of those tools that, you give it RSS feed, it creates the entire website. Like they do everything for it. I was just lazy.
Yeah.
And I checked Google Search Console. The pages were not getting indexed. I just thought it's thin content, like maybe Google doesn't want. But when I checked the reason why they're not getting indexed, there was an explanation that said Googlebot wanted to crawl the pages, but thought that this would overload the server, and that's why we delayed the crawl. And it's been like that for months. Yes, it's not even like my website was slow. I never saw that before.
No,
So
me neither.
I moved the website to WordPress 3 weeks ago now. I'm not even sure. New domain. I registered it on Friday. I launched WordPress on Saturday. On Monday, every page is indexed on the new website. The old website had like 63% of pages not indexed for that reason. I was angry at myself because I wasn't checking. I was lazy. But there's so many ways that bad performance, not just Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals are just, they're the eye candy that you can throw at clients, basically. But having a performant website and server it's so damn important. And yeah, more people should know about that. Let's talk about some common and evergreen misconceptions and mistakes that people make, because this was like the most obvious mistake to me that I ever made in my life. I was dumb for not checking this, and you can just go to Search Console and just check. What are some of the most common misconceptions people have in SEO space and optimization in general?
I think the main common misconception about SEO is that you can layer it over once you've launched, right? So you launch a website and then go, now SEO this, or you write an article and say, now SEO this. Like, no, it doesn't work that way, right?
Why doesn't it work?
From the ground up.
Why doesn't it work that way? What is the difference? And I'm genuinely asking this. I agree with you. Like, I agree, get it done properly and then launch it. But why, like, launching a website and then 2 weeks later work on SEO? Why is this approach bad?
Because you only have one shot at a first impression, right? And it takes a while. So say you launched, right, and you just had only ChatGPT content of it. I'll rewrite it over time, but a search engine does not know that you will do that, right? So it will index everything, and then I don't really need to rank this, right? And then you're all the way down. So there's no reason why they would recrawl it. So then it takes a long time. And I've actually seen this where it was so crappy that we're better off just moving it to the new domain with a full new website, and it would outrank everything with way better content.
This is
right?
really interesting. So basically, Google is saying, if you couldn't bother, I'm not going to bother. Like,
but why should they? The web is growing at such a massive scale. Like, they need to make decisions, what to revisit, what to recrawl, what to re-index. Like, when you work for a massive site, like I worked for one of the biggest technology blogs in the world, and it would be visited, literally, the feed URL would be visited multiple times a minute. Mm-hmm. Pretty much every 5 seconds or 4 seconds, right? If they would publish an article, it would be crawled within 2 minutes. Right?
Right. Yep.
Now that
and
does
that's
not
not going to happen.
Exactly.
Okay,
So,
this is really good. This is
so
great.
that's why I think that's a common misconception, that it's a source you can do after launching.
This is
Just don't do
something
that.
that an SEO person like you would know. I would have a guess maybe, but I guarantee you most people don't know this and are not aware of this and don't think of it this way.
No.
And this is something that you should talk about. We should talk about. So I like that a lot. You mentioned logs and the interview you did with SEJ, with Lauren Baker, you were talking about logs as well. Now, how does logs and looking back at history and at things like Wayback Machine also, how does that play in with your optimization efforts? How do you use those tools?
Sometimes you see a dip in traffic, say, for instance, after migration or something like that, right? And what happened was, in this case, for instance, a local flower shop, they lost a ton of traffic because of a migration. And I looked at everything. The 301s were all there. But you know what happened? What I found when I went into the Wayback Machine, they removed one blog article about a venomous frog they found in a box of lilies, which made the local news, the BBC news, and everything. It got linked to by all of these news outlets. But it was about 6 years ago, so they thought it's out of date. With the new website, we don't need to do this. And by looking in the Wayback Machine, I was able to find the article, the exact article, just revise it, get all the content, put it back in, the same URL, boom, and the traffic went straight back up.
I would say doing things like this is part of the holistic SEO mindset and SEO approach. Like you really need to be mindful of literally everything. Like when you're doing...
But the Wayback Machine, we spoke about it offline, right? And the interesting thing I found is for every client, you ask them, you got to a client, a medium size or a large size, you say, how many iterations of the website have you had? And you say, well, this is the second. And then you go, how long have you been here? And they go, 4 years. Okay, cool.
Right.
So that means they got like 2 in 4 years, or maybe a little longer. But when you actually go into the Wayback Machine, you can see that there's actually 6 or 7 or 8.
Right. But they don't think they're like full redesigns.
Yeah. Because and so you'll find loads of links that are not working because people look at the current website, they redirect it to the next one. But what if there were already redirects in?
That's absolutely incredible. That's such a good story. And let's move on to stories now. Let's talk about how this holistic, get the basics done right, can really be applied to actual life and not just SEO and optimization. To start that, you have a story that I want you to tell. It's a conversion hotel story. And this episode is coming out, I think, September 25th. And that means it's 2 months until Conversion Hotel. And you'll see both of us there. It's an incredible conference from everyone who's been there. Like they say, this is the place to go. This is the place to be. I cannot wait to be there and meet in person. But tell me that dishwasher story from Conversion Hotel.
It's the only conference I pay to go for. I haven't missed an edition, apart from one when I was supposed to speak about COVID. But anyway, I think there's 2 stories. A very simple one was there's an unconference, right? And an unconference basically means bring your own topic and talk about something. And I had a conversation with Els Arts. The interesting thing was she was like, how do I find the right people? She was struggling to hire the right people for her agency. And I said, you need an optimization mindset. And this is something you can't really get in an interview. So I came up with an idea. And I said, why don't you do a dishwasher test? She was like, what? I said, well, just put all of your dirty dishes on top of, like, near the waiting room and ask the person coming for an interview, oh, could you please help us out and just fill the dishwasher? It's so stressful, but it needs to run. And then halfway the interview, you walk out, you open it. If there is a structure, that means they thought about the outcome.
Right.
Right? If they just chucked everything in, they're not going to make the interview.
But let me ask you this as a follow-up then. What if they're just going to do a better job than they normally would with the loading of the dishwasher? because they're at the job interview and they need to.
They won't have a structure. You either have a
Okay.
structure or you haven't, because
Right.
you've constantly been improving this. So the interesting thing was that during Conversion Hotel, I basically put in, just after dinner at 8 o'clock, downstairs, there were just a few chairs. I wasn't expecting a lot of people. So I said, Arnout Hellemans, the dishwasher test. That was how to load the dishwasher. That was my own conference, right? And I started out with 3 or 4 or 5 people, ended up with about 25, 30. Right?
Oh, wow.
And one of them that also joined was Lucas Vermeer, right? Super smart guy, knows everything about experimentation and everything. And he basically said, I think this is bullshit. And then I think a few months later, we got talking on LinkedIn and messaging. And then at some point he goes, who do you think loads the dishwasher at my house? You were telling the story to all of these optimizers that gave up their weekend. Who do you think loads the dishwasher? There's nobody there that doesn't load the dishwasher. So it would be a useless conversation. So it needed a devil's advocate saying it's bullshit, because otherwise you don't spark anything. So that's why he took the opposite position. But I loved it. And the year after, I was planning on coming, and the idea was to bring a dishwasher.
Arnout, are you bringing a dishwasher this year? I have to ask you now.
No, but they actually did a similar thing. They got a cardboard box with all kind of groceries, and then it was the challenge to load it as fast as possible. Like,
And
I
as
have a
efficiently.
structure on how to load it, right? So you put the heavy stuff and then the other stuff on top, but some people don't, right? And it's a similar kind of test.
I had a conversation with another Dutch guy, not an optimizer, about how do you empty a carton of eggs? Like, which eggs do you pick first? And some people, savages in my opinion, just go from one side to the other. But then if someone lifts it or pulls it and then it's heavy on one side, it can fall. Always make it symmetrical. Like, you need to be careful about these things.
Of course.
There we go. Again, I'm not crazy. Thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback.
I mean, and this is the fun thing. And the other thing you'll find, this is another thing I talked about. I find that a lot of people that are good at optimizing also love cooking. And if you think about the similarities, you've got ingredients, you've got preparation time, and you've got an audience. So I will always ask, do you like spicy? No, not really.
Yeah.
Then I leave the spices out, right? And so there's all these kind of things that play into this.
I'm not big on meditation. I just can't do it. I really admire the people who can, but I cannot. There are two things I do to substitute meditation. One is cooking, because when I'm cooking, I can be standing for 5 hours and like they fly by, literally fly by. The other one is running, and the longer the run is, more meditative it becomes.
What I do is swimming. It also helps me structure my thoughts a lot.
Exactly. So let's talk about some more real life applications for this. You mentioned parenting offline when we started. So how does this mindset translate to parenting?
It was actually fun. We had an unconference session at Conversion Hotel, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, with Jordan Lenz and some other people. And we talked about how to optimize parenting. And I think there's loads of ways, but for me, it started with the notion I somewhere picked up that you can basically have an influence on your children up until the age of 10 to 12, right? After that, it's just riding the waves. They are basically trying to break loose. This is what puberty is, right? Now, I've got 3 in that situation now, so I know exactly what it is. But so the interesting thing is I started thinking about this, and this is also one of the main reasons I got into freelance, because it gives you the freedom to just say, I work for 4 days a week. I don't want any calls before 10. I don't want any calls after 4:30. So you can always be there for them. And I think it's very difficult because we get children at a later age. at the moment. So it's also the busiest period, right? Everybody works on their career and everything. But I think if you make the decision that you'll have children, you should at least put the effort in those first 10 years, 10, 12 years, because you will reap the benefits all around. So just be with them and just put them to bed. So we always had dinner with the 5 of us.
Having those moments in the formative years, like you said, the first 10 to 12 years of their lives, it's the most precious thing you have, because they'll be gone at some point.
Yeah, and I think that when they get into puberty, they're all, at least in my experience, they're more open to having conversations about it, because that's what they're used to, right?
It's another habit that was formed in the first 10 to 12 years of their lives. Let's just recap. Conversion Hotel. There's talks about dishwashers. There's talks about parenting. What else can I expect at my first one?
Well, one year I won a prize. So you basically have, say, best talk, and I'd won the best unconference. You know what I did? I bought 5 big boxes of oysters, and I said MVT oysters, multivariate oyster testing.
You brought them to the conference or bought them afterwards?
At the conference, I opened them. I just sat in a room with like all these oysters, and then I said, "Yeah, taste one, pick one, taste one. Tell me, what does it taste like?" So I got oysters from Ireland. I got my favorite ones from Zeeland. I've got them from France. I've got them from, like, I had 4 different ones, and they were distinctively different. So everybody just asked me, like, "Arnout, are we going to do a multivariate testing oysters?" I said no, because it's only fun the first time, right? And then my interest, it was an experiment. I wanted to do it, done, tick the box.
Let's just end the interview on what the takeaway message, when I asked you what the takeaway message should be for the people listening to this, it's that they're inspired to look at optimization in a more holistic way. So I just want to repeat that. The only way to optimize a system, whatever system that is, it could be something in your life, it could be a website, it's only as strong as the weakest link. Because if your SEO is A+, but you no index every page, or your developer no indexes every page, not many good things will happen. Nothing good will happen, let's be honest. So looking at optimization in a more holistic way, I couldn't agree more, and I could not have loved this interview more. So Arnout, what is the best way for the listeners to connect with you and find you online?
I think it's LinkedIn. That's where we're most active. But you can also find me on Twitter. You can find me on Mastodon, like loads of other places. But if you want to connect with me, more than happy to. Just say that you listen to the podcast. Give me things that I should improve, right? I love getting tips on where to improve, because I have this mindset, and you have as well. So they can connect with me there, and if anybody wants to work with me, also fine, fun. I'll promise you it's fun. And we're going to get the results as well.
I'm sure of that. So I will have one last very short question, but first of all, I want to thank the audience for listening to this episode. Like I said at the beginning, go to nohackspot.com/follow. You'll find the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. All those links will be at that page. So nohackspot.com/follow. And then leave a review, rate the podcast. It helps with the rankings and people finding it. One last question for you, Arnout. What is the one word or phrase that you have for yourself 6 months from now?
6 months from now?
Yep.
I actually have no idea.